So Nikhil's brief was actually, imagine if Salim Javed were to write dialogues to Nivyanithi. That was exactly his brief. You play it on that pitch.
The best way to describe the writer's room while writing Hijack 2 was that we felt hijacked.
Oh god. Initially you have to start with, oh, what I've written is shit and I have to rewrite it. Like, otherwise you'll never get to a point where it's halfway decent, you know.
I especially look for people who actually write and don't talk about writing.
Because we knew that we are constrained by the staging. So let the dialogue be like almost like a ping pong.
What all of us would definitely want is a little more plurality. You know, something that we constantly impose on ourselves within the writer's room, which is ki kuch naya, kuch fresh, kuch alag.
I think there needs to be less reliance on data.
Yes.
I mean, writing doesn't come from data, it comes from experience.
Hello everyone, welcome to the SWA Awards Roundtable in the category of Web Drama. I'm Devika Bhagat, your moderator for today. I've been an SWA card-carrying member for approximately 2 decades. The SWA, or the Screenwriters Association, is a union for screenwriters and lyricists in India across film, television and OTT. The SWA is an amazing organization that supports and protects the rights of all of us, who are the first to get hired and often the last to get paid. Every year, the SWA comes together to celebrate the best in storytelling, the words, the visions, and the imaginations that shape our screens. This year, at the 6th edition of the SWA Awards held on the 9th of August, we had some remarkable web drama series that were honored, and we are lucky enough to have the winners with us today. From Freedom at Midnight, the winner of Best Story, we have Abhinandan Gupta.
Hi.
Also, Freedom at Midnight, the Best Screenplay winners, once again Abhinandan Gupta, Adwitiya Kareng Das, Gundeep Kaur, and Revanta Sarabhai, who couldn't join us today. And from IC 814, the Kandahar Hijack, we have Trishant Shrivastava and Anubhav Sinha, who couldn't join us today. Welcome. These are the people who basically gave us unforgettable moments, razor-sharp lines, and deeply human stories in 2 of the most talked about series of the year. So let's dive into the process, the craft, the risks, and the joys of writing series that move so many people. Welcome to this session today. First of all, how does it feel? We go through a long period of time. I mean, Trishant, for you, it was 5 years. For you guys, it was more than 2 years. And to finally go through so many reiterations, revisions, drafts, joy, heartbreak, etc. How does it feel to be sitting here being winners? Woo!
Feels good.
Yeah?
Yeah.
What about you?
It feels great. It feels great to be acknowledged by other writers. It feels amazing. I mean, so many people at SWA you've worked with, and we're all working together across different projects, and it feels great. It feels like family.
Yeah.
So it feels like being recognized by your own family.
Yeah, that's the amazing part about these awards. Now tell me, from the beginning, what drew you to these stories? I'll start with you guys. What made you feel that there was a series in the very, expansive story of The Partition and, of course, the book, Freedom at Midnight?
Well, we were commissioned to write this. Sony Live had acquired the rights to the book Freedom at Midnight, and they wanted to serialize it and make it into a web series. But how I started out on this was that I had written a web series on spec about Jinnah and Nehru, and I tried to do something like a epic rivalry between them or something like that. And I had taken it to Shougata Mukherjee at Sony Live, and he liked it. But then he said that we can't go ahead with it because you've taken from so many different sources. So it's a little tricky to do a historical which is not based on a book that we've acquired the rights for. So nothing came of it, but I think 3 months down the line, they acquired the rights to Freedom at Midnight, and they got in touch with me and they said that, we like what you wrote, you've done the research, so would you want to develop this? So that was COVID time. I was like, yeah, sure. I mean, I'm not doing much. And then they put me on to Nikhil Advani and MA Entertainment, who were the production house assigned to this. And that's how we started work on the book. So I was like, I've been a history buff all my life, and I was especially interested in independence and partition because, like, I have a family history of being displaced by the partition and everything. So I'd grown up on those stories. So it was something always that I was aware of, it was in the back of my mind. So that's how I started into this world. And then, like I said, these were the chain of events. And then I met Nikhil, and then we were on, you know.
Exactly. So, it was lucky enough that you were able to delve into a subject matter that you already had an interest in because of the spec script that you had written about Nehru and Jinnah. And for yourself, Trishant, what drew you to this subject?
I mean, it was also sort of commissioned. I mean, there was a book. So our producers at Matchbox, Sarita and Sanjay, they had acquired the rights to a book that Captain Devi Sharan had written, and Captain Devi Sharan was the pilot of the IC-814 plane. You know, he flew the plane when it got hijacked. So they had the rights, and then they asked me that would you like to develop. Now the thing was that the book was very small, and book only described the captain's POV. So, and I think Netflix was interested. Netflix wanted to make it, so it was. So I took the book, and then I read the book, and then I met Captain as well. And after that, we realized that this cannot be the show, because what happens in the real incident is that they start flying at 4 p.m. The plane gets hijacked around 4:50 p.m. And then he's flying 16 hours continuously with very little breaks until they reach Kandahar next day at 8 a.m. So possibly it was one of the longest flights that any pilot had taken back then, with a gun also on his neck. But the story was very short. So then I started research. Then we did research for almost 1.5 years, and we tried to understand the hijack, the geopolitics at that time. Why did the hijack happen? What happened after the hijack? How does it feel like to be stranded in a plane for 7 days in a place where you don't even know? Like a lot of passengers didn't know that they are in Kandahar for very long, So we tried to get into that, and the research took on its own journey. And so after the research with insights from Captain, that's when I started writing, and that's how the show started shaping up.
Yeah, because you have to account for every perspective when you're creating, a limited series like IC-814.
And the challenge was that one challenge that कुछ लोगों को पता है कि 99 में एक प्लेन हाईजैक हुआ था, ठीक है, एंड उनको ये पता है कि हाँ 3 टेररिस्ट को छोड़ा था, एक इंसान की डेथ हुई थी और 7 दिन बाद वो वापस आ गए थे. बट बहुत सारे लोगों को नहीं पता है, people who were born after 99 or people who were born post 95 don't remember कि कुछ ऐसा हाईजैक हुआ भी था. तो it was also, there was a duty that we felt, we need to also educate, and it was not about कि अच्छा ये हाईजैक हुआ था, ये इसकी स्टोरी है, ये शो है, this is how it happened. तो वहाँ पे there was a lot of challenges that came to us कि अच्छा what is the perspective through which we should tell this story,
Yes.
And then, as you know, there are platforms and there are producers and there are people, everybody has a say into कि ये story ऐसी होनी चाहिए, ये story वैसी होनी चाहिए, आप ऐसे बताओ. So that was the real challenge, कि what is the best way to possibly tell this story, which is based on a real event. So you can't tinker with real events. And there was a person who has died. There are people, there's a family that has lost somebody. So you have to be sensitive about them. Plus the event was not also happening in isolation.
Exactly. So which is also, when you talk about the partition, right? If you talk to youngsters, they'll say, we got freedom, on the 15th of August, 1947. They have no idea about the fact that for a lot of people, it was a very complex and heartbreaking time, because what they thought was the achieving of freedom was actually the breaking of their family, loss of, lives and their livelihood and their homes. So when you developed the story, and of course, when you two came on to the screenplay, the perspective or the kind of story that you wanted to tell, also to correct the facts and also to bring about that empathy for that time. So how did you go about that process?
Yeah, so I mean, it is, it's like the thing with independence and partition, especially now, is that everybody has a take on it and everybody has an opinion on it. But maybe all opinions are not equal to each other in terms of accuracy. And also, when you're dealing with history, something which is so polarizing, there's either an Indian line or a Pakistani line or a British colonial line, which are rather simplistic and reductive. So we definitely wanted to dismantle some of those fixed notions that are already there and hopefully be a little bit more, not take passed down knowledge of what exists in the public imagination and sort of perpetuate that. So research was very important, and with history, and we are not professionally trained historians or anything, so we actually had to really read a lot. So with history, what we also realized that it really is all about perspective. Like the facts are the same, the events are the same, the paperwork is the same, your sources are the same, but how you interpret those sources is really what a historian does. So that was one of the learnings. And the thing was also, because of all these figures, these larger than life political figures like Nehru, Gandhi and Jinnah, etc., they're either hated or they are sort of revered and put on a pedestal. So I think we as dramatists, we're not historians, we're dramatists. So our real endeavor was that let us humanize these people, let them be more than figures of a history textbook, and let us really understand why they took the decisions that they took, and treat them with empathy and a little bit of compassion, hopefully. And we were not interested in making, heroes or villains out of them, but really to have a more humane, a more humane lens on them and see why they did what they did.
Yeah, I mean, and we're talking about basically like you have your historical accounts, right? You have the Freedom at Midnight book. You have other sources. You have autobiography by Jawaharlal Nehru and, other historical figures. But then how do you decide whose truth? How do you decide to tell whose truth do you decide to tell, right?
Yeah, so I think what we did was that I, along with Abhinandan, we read a lot of literature. So there, some books are a little better written in terms of tackling the same problem that you're mentioning. In terms of they're also very much more clearer in terms of, okay, this is something that somebody has claimed, but it happened on this date. But before this date, some other source material they've referred to and they've said, okay, so and so person has put in their diary they had a meeting with this person. The details are not that well known, but if we have to speculate, then we can speculate that that meeting might have a bearing on this change of stance. So there were some sources that were clearer in that sense, that gave us a little more clarity in terms of which part is documented, which part is from first sources, which part is from a secondary source, which part is an inference that they have made from their own side. So yeah, I think while writing, we also discovered that there is different ways of telling the same truth, and anybody who wants to try and be objective, which is some of the books that we also laid our hands on. Somebody who's trying to be objective will try their best to explain why they have come to a certain conclusion rather than just running with the conclusion. So for me, whenever they would ask for a source, or whenever we would or the production house or the platform would try to verify some of the claims that we were making, we would pull from these sources a little more from more trusted sources. And obviously I was also looking at newspapers, news articles from the time, so you could understand the chronology a little better. So it enabled us to
Adwitiya, come on. Come on. Say it.
No. I was just laughing at the.
So it enabled us all of this, like having multiple streams of input for ourselves, not just a particular kind of book, not just a particular kind of writing, not just one faction, one segmented perspective of history, but we entertained a lot of input. We had a lot of incoming streams, and then we tried our best to make the most educated guess about, okay, this is something that we can say with confidence.
And I think the key word here is context. Like the events are the same, and it's not that far back in time. So, it's heavily documented. There's a lot of press, there's a lot of literature written. All of the protagonists are writers themselves. So they're writing their own autobiographies, or somebody's written a biography on them. So the events are the same. We just had to say, okay, so this event happened, but in what context do we view it? Say, I'll give you an example. Like, Mountbatten had pulled up independence by a good 8 months. He was supposed to be independent in about June of 48, but he pulled it up to August 47. Now, that's a fact. That's a fact of history. There's enough literature out there that supports it. But I think for us, the reason was, why did he do that? What were his intentions in doing it? And the more we read out, and of course the repercussions, the consequences of that. So the event exists, and that's a fact. But we just had to contextualize it, that why did that happen, and from whose lens are we looking at? So
Exactly, as compared to Trishant, who has people who can tell him most of them.
But
the
actually,
who, what,
the
why,
same
where.
problem. We had so many versions of the same story, and everybody that we met was talking from memory. And somehow I think there's a strange thing about memory, that any bad event, any traumatic experience, 20 years down the line, you only remember the good things about it.
This is what they say about giving birth to a child. You don't remember how bad it is.
But that's, I mean...
In a way, writing is that, right?
Same thing about writing.
Yeah.
Series.
And you have entered the room thinking, okay, they will tell us about, this hijack, that they were in a hijacked plane.
Yeah.
And somehow you meet them and they remember it fondly. They almost remember it fondly. I would not say almost. I would use the word almost. One very interesting thing that I did while writing, so I was writing all these characters, the people that we talk about in the plane, and as I still write very long character sketches. Like, it often goes into 10, 12 pages, like a biography of a character.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if it will feature in the show or in the film or not, but I will write it so that I know this man. And then even after that, I was not clear. So I went to a psychiatrist with all these character sketches.
Makes
I
sense.
asked him to analyze these people for me, and because I am believing that this was a traumatic experience, they are talking about it in an almost positive way, and then he analyzed, and then like one of the insights that I got was that trauma can also result in certain positive experiences, and that's how possibly they remember this event 20 years down the line. So they remember it almost fondly. Then when you talk to the interrogators and the investigators and the journalists working it back then, they have a different version of the story. 3 people in the cockpit: the captain, co-pilot, and the flight engineer. 3 different versions of the story.
Yeah, wow.
They were sitting in one confined space, but they have 3 different versions of the story. They also have written books. Like Anil Jagia, the flight engineer, has written a book. Captain Devi Sharan, the pilot, has written a book. Then the flight purser, he has written a book. So there were around 16 books written on the hijack. There were multiple people who were on honeymoons. A couple of them have written a book. No, we didn't read all the books. We read a few. Then there are books written by journalists. So obviously you have different versions of the same event. And then at the end of it, as writers, we just have to sit and choose.
Yeah.
And I'm saying, because of that disclaimer that comes in the beginning, and as Abhinandan rightly pointed out, we are not historians. We are not here to twist facts, but at the same time, we are also not here to verify it or say that anything is a fact.
Yeah, but as Abhinandan was saying, sometimes we all have to be like psychiatrists ourselves.
We have to.
Like, we have to analyze the psychological reasons behind something, because we don't have that person available, or like, you all have identified different truths of the same event. Now, for both of your series, now very importantly, the audience knows the end. Okay, for both. How both are going to end. So how do you like keep, I suppose, the tension alive, the hooks, right, at the end of every episode, because we know what's going to happen at the end of the 6 or the 8 episodes, right? So how do you keep the tension alive? Like, what is your secret, and then what is your secret?
Yeah, I think it was a how done it, how did
Yeah,
this happen,
exactly.
So we went by that logic. And also we were severely constrained by in terms of staging, because a lot of it were a bunch of men talking in rooms, So there wasn't, till the time we cut out of the political drama and corridors of power and we go and see what is happening on the streets, there's also not that much action, quote unquote, So it was a challenge how to keep it dramatic and how to keep hooky. I think one thing we came up with was with every scene should be a conflict. Like every
Yes, of
scene, either two people are bickering or they're disagreeing or they're arguing or there has to be a push and pull, So हर scene में बहस करवा दो किसी की या फिर or they're not able to agree on something or because we knew that we are constrained by the staging. So let the dialogue be like almost like a ping pong, कि इसने एक दिया तो उसने भी एक दिया. And there I think our approach was slightly different than IC 814, that we went for the dialogue bazi and the sort of heightened, elevated. We probably don't talk like that in real life, and probably those men also didn't. But we wanted to give it that kind of punch because we didn't have, say for example, in comparison to IC 814, that I was
Action
watching it,
sequences.
episode 3, I think is very thrilling, whether it's going to land in Lahore or not. So it becomes physical action. So, you have a lot to play with. Does the plane land? Does it crash? Do they make it out? It's all visual. We didn't have any of that. It was just a lot of men talking. So we resorted to all these things,
Yeah,
Let
you're
the-
basically talking about a balance here. The
Yeah.
screenplay is exciting, so the dialogues keep it tempered. Here,
Yeah.
you're trying to. The screenplay has a lot of historical
Yeah, so
information.
you pad it up with dialogues.
Yes.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
then you restore the balance on both sides.
Yeah.
And for us, the context helps because these are larger than life men, and we've read about them in history. So I guess, and also I think like it goes back to like any good writing is like any story is plot plus story, right? Plot is what's happening. Story is how our characters are reacting to the plot. So in I guess both our cases, the plot is out there, so you know the heroes, villains, or how it's going to turn out, and it's then how Nehru will react to something, or if the interim government is not working out, how will the different people react to it, and what will they say? And we already know from extensive research that has been done that we knew how, basically we knew the philosophy of these men. Like we knew, we can gauge, right, how Nehru would react from all that we know about Nehru now. So that you have the plot point and then you have the characters react to it. And I think for me personally, it was like, what is the juiciest? Like, which perspective is juiciest for each scene? While knowing how our overall arc will end. So, and then it just fell into place in a way.
Yeah, for me to add to what y'all have been saying, specifically because Abhinandan, I think you said it correctly that for us it was a how done it, right? But then in my head somewhere I was a little I was approaching it in the way ki okay, we already know so and so things happened. We already we know the events, but in my head it was ki I'll just, for me, if I have to watch anything, right, what will be my hook point in watching a thing? Why will I be interested in watching a piece of, art, anything that is coming out on screen, on OTT, anywhere, right? So I will take interest and I will feel the things and I will be gripped to it only if it says something that I have thought about or I'm feeling, or it is a question that's at the back of my head, right?
Yeah.
So right now also we see, and especially because we all have phones in our hands and we have social media and there's a lot of platforms to voice ourselves. So we as a culture, as a society, largely we have understood that okay, there's a lot of disagreement that exists. Everybody is entitled to their own, everybody has their own backgrounds, everybody is coming from a point of view, but then how how does such a wide variety of, an array of opinions and such strong POVs, how do they come to the same page and then take a decision? Because I think in our head somewhere we want that for ourselves as a society right now also, right? There's a lot of disagreement, there's a lot of bickering, but we want things to move forward. So I think for me, at the back of my head, there was this lens that helped me sometimes pick things for myself, which was ki, okay, ye log itne different POV ke the sab log, then what made them come together on one particular issue and back a certain cause? What must have been the journey that would have convinced so and so person to support a particular thing? कल उसने नहीं किया, but आज उसने कर दिया, right? So there's a proposal that came some 5 years ago that said the same thing, but at that time it wasn't acceptable, but now it is. So what is the journey that somebody undertakes to then get convinced to somebody else's point of view? And that is how people come to the table and say agree on the same thing. That is how, the world's discussions move forward. So I think that was an interesting exercise to do as a writer, especially when you're talking about.
And that's also how you negotiate writers' rooms, right? So coming to writers' room, I mean, of course, Trishant, you went on this journey for 5 years, and writers came and went. So let's talk a little bit about that.
I don't know where to start. Going by, I'll answer that, and what these guys are also saying. I mean, for IC also, see, we were telling a very grim story. There's no silver lining to that story. It's a story of a tragedy, largely. And as inside the writers' room also, and I would want to thank all my writers who at different stages, and the researchers and the junior writers in the writers' room, everyone who just stuck around, But I don't know, I wrote the show thrice. I mean, because there was different directors. Different directors attached at different times. And the sort of both beauty of the story and the sort of problem of the story was that it can be told in any way. You can take any perspective and you can tell this story, For us, the challenge was, okay, there is so much about the event that you still don't know. Let me sort of talk about that, For example, Taliban actually helped us in Afghanistan. They made sure that...
That part was a shock for me when I was watching the series. I was like, what?
So Taliban actually helped us in Afghanistan in a way that they didn't allow the hijackers to kill anyone. So that was a big help, And so even if... And nobody is sort of defending what Taliban did to come to power and what they did afterwards, but just in isolation for this event, they were sort of helpful. So that was sort of a revelation. And then, for example, one thing we were very clear, and you should discuss in the writers' room. Our IB and RAW officers will be the age they were when they went to Afghanistan. So they were all in 55, 56, 58. When they went to negotiate, to negotiate. So we never wanted to show them like these young, lanky fellows who would, the image that mostly the officers have. So we wanted to sort of break that image, and I think Anubhav really was excited about that. We'll show them everything as it was. So, but writing, the first time I had a different set of writers. We were writing, and then somehow 5 years is a very long period, and it's not about your writing for 5 years. It's about these breaks that come in between where you're not doing anything. Where you don't know if the show is happening or not. Where you're almost sure that the show is not happening now. Let's find something else. This was good. But we had a lot of fun. I'll tell you so Matchbox, before I joined, somehow they created one version of IC which was scrapped by Netflix. So then I had come in and we started afresh. So they had created this whole, almost the length of this room, a model of real life scalable model of the plane.
Wow.
Yeah, and they had initially planned to do this miniature sort of shooting, in that plane, because it can be opened from top, there were lights. So 5 years while we sat in that room, that plane was behind me constantly.
Oh my God.
There was a defunct cockpit panel.
Wow.
That's cool though.
I'd like to be in that writer's
It will
room.
go down.
Like the pilot.
Yeah.
You spoke too soon.
Yeah. So the best way to describe the writer's room while writing a hijack show was that we felt hijacked.
Oh God.
You know?
They trapped you in there. They're like, feel the
Yeah,
pain.
and after a while you start enjoying the misery.
Yeah. Oh, that's all writing, right?
Yeah,
Like, that's
I mean,
all of writing.
That's
We
what-
are writers because we
Yeah.
like misery.
Yeah.
Because you can't be a writer if you don't enjoy misery and self-loathing.
Yeah, of course,
You know?
course. Oh God.
So yeah, I mean it was like that. After a while, we used to come and sit there for no reason also. You know, because now the episode gaya hai, feedback aayega.
Your Stockholm syndrome.
Yeah, seriously.
It is like that.
Meta,
You don't have anything else to do. So you come there, you sit, you chat, you have chai.
My life feels empty without this plane.
Yeah, so you do get withdrawals then. You know, then the show gets over. For 5-10 days, you don't know what to do.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Just don't know.
it does feel like that, but that is brilliant. I mean, but then Matchbox really went out there to
Yeah.
really, give form to the story, help you guys,
Yeah.
bring the story to life,
No,
right?
they
And
really great.
coming to your writer's room, first I'm going to ask Gundeep and Adwitiya, what was it like being in a room? Granted, you are two women, but being in an environment which is male heavy, writing a story which is male dominated. I mean, there are only two predominant female characters in Freedom at Midnight, which is Sarojini and Edwina. So tell me a little bit about
Fatima
that.
Jinnah,
Fatima as
little
well,
bit.
yeah.
Oh,
A
yes,
little
of
bit,
course.
yeah.
Yeah.
Good question.
Yeah.
Played by Ira.
Can I take that? Yeah, I'll
Yeah,
take that.
please go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, so I think very lucky, and I'm not lying, very luckily, I think in the writer's room we had no such stress. I think he was more
Yes.
concerned, before any of us could get concerned about lack of balance, I think Abhinandan was. So I think in terms of just representing a feminine POV, not just making women into characters, I think he was always on board and he was like really ahead of us a lot of the times. And even at MA, like we did have voices, the production house that we worked with, we did have voices that supported this cause, and whenever it would come to a conversation about it, but the book talks more about certain characters than others. We did have people at MA also back then where they would also advocate for this, and they would also push to try and keep a balance in between the energies. But having said that, yes, there were times that we did go a little more than necessary, and then we got that feedback. Listen, it feels like somebody else is controlling the scene a little more than they would have ideally gotten the power to. Then we dialed it back. So yeah, that process was like that, if I remember correctly, Adwitiya.
Yeah. Also, in general, a better story is one that is more authentic. And the world is authentic because there are men and women both in it, right? So we needed it. Also, again, the challenges we had because of our subject matter, these meeting, then you intercut the meetings. And so it made sense to also have a female voice who would say something that's helpful, that's taking the story forward. Or, of course, I mean, the oldest trick in the book, you have your sounding board. And I'm not saying use female characters as only sounding boards. That's not what I'm saying at all, please. But I'm saying that it helped, right? It makes it more interesting. And also, I mean, there are feminine characteristics or feminine emotions, traditionally speaking, and masculine emotions. And then you... See, I remember one scene where the Mountbattens, they go to Kahuta, right? And it's just shocking because they represent our privilege, right? They're this distant sort of POV, and you go in and you see the carnage and you see the price of what it is. So in that situation, Dickie Mountbatten cannot lose his shit and start crying. Right, but Edwina could, and we have that scene also. She's losing her mind. You don't know what to do because it's such a bad situation, and you're supposed to figure out the answer to it. So I think even in that sense, having male-female perspective helps. You don't even need to make the woman always be
Also,
emotional.
Sarojini Naidu's character is absent from the book. We just created
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
we were like, let's put one woman on the negotiating table. So we created her as kind of a Sutradhar, and the more we researched, we found out that she was actually very good friends with Jinnah at some
Yeah.
point in time. And she was actually quite a flamboyant woman, really loud and very cheeky sense of humor. She would really also, take the Mickey out of Gandhiji. And she was really bindas and she didn't mince her words. She had a sharp tongue. So we're like, okay, let's just use her, let's just have a visual break. All these geriatrics talking, like how much will they talk? And let's just put a woman there and let's see one sari, one nice costume, on screen.
And she was
So-
sassy.
Cool lady, yeah.
Yeah, so we thought, okay, she's there, she's not in the book, but let's use her. And then Gundeep she found the more material that
Yeah.
she dug up. We're like, okay, this is really interesting. This
Yeah.
is really interesting. So there's episode 7, which is a bit of a flashback where we trace Jinnah's political trajectory
Yeah.
and how Sarojini Naidu was part of it and everything. So we,
Yeah, and how he felt she betrayed
So
him.
we-
Yeah, she betrayed
what
him.
where we were constrained by the source material, we created.
Yeah, I think the good thing that happened, actually, to summarize what he was saying, was कि the good thing that happened was कि we were able to identify कि यहाँ पे ना skew हो रहा है and यहाँ पे हमें कुछ चाहिए. मतलब इन द सेंस कि ये एनर्जी सारी एक ही तरफ जा रही है एंड यहाँ पे हमें एक ऑल्टरनेट पीओवी चाहिए. देयर मस्ट बी समथिंग लाइक दिस दैट मस्ट बी हैपनिंग पैरेलली. कैन वी लुक फॉर समथिंग लाइक दिस? देन मतलब वी वुड try and take some guesses कि अच्छा ये भी पैरेलली कहीं हो रहा होगा, कुछ तो हो रहा होगा ना. If there's a disaster that has happened, there must be humanitarian aid that must be given, and then we would try and look for answers to these questions. So basically, as a writer's room, we were able to identify those gaps, and then we would like try pull in source materials and try to guess कि किसने कहाँ participate किया. And then sometimes we would find like, and whenever we would find कि ये मिल गया है and somebody actually came and did work here. For example, in Kahuta only, the episode that Adwitiya was talking about, I did get source material that said that Edwina would attend relief camps. She delayed her flying back to Delhi, at that point in time because she wanted to stay back and help people. And she was part of the
Red Cross.
The Red Cross, like back
Relief work.
yeah, and she's done a lot of relief work before, and we and like later on we did get information that said she did that kind of work in India as well.
Yeah.
So we were able to quickly pull source material that would verify the same, and then we were able to like import
Yeah, so
that
you were
in the
able
story.
to create these female characters that did
Yeah.
not exist in the source material
Yeah.
because
But they existed in real
I mean,
life.
not from our primary source, but from other
From
sources.
other sources.
And also, one more thing I'd like to say, I think we also realized that, trying to impose today's understanding of gender or feminism it's futile because it was a different time.
Yeah, it was not that
It's
world.
the 40s, it's a different society. Really, women are not on
Yeah.
the decision-making table, and that's just the truth of the matter.
Yeah.
So we so like this was the world, but within that, let's have small wherever we find ki chalo ek like the Edwina incident or Sarojini Naidu, to karte hain. matlab.
Sarojini quips also about this, no?
Yeah,
That they are making the decision. They've sent me here
Yeah.
for the radio interview.
Yeah,
And
Which
the
is the truth.
Yeah.
Marketing.
It's okay.
Marketing.
yeah.
Yeah.
The book does drop hints also at places, right? There is like in the prologue of the book it says कि sometimes Mountbatten would if officially he cannot convey information somewhere, he
He'd
would
send Edwina.
unofficially send Edwina to sort of set the ground for him or just unofficially convey some things to the other party. So it does hint at that, and then all we had to do like was pull.
Well, that's exactly what happens these days also. You talk about PR, publicity.
PR, yeah.
Women are sent
women
for
were
PR and
used for
publicity.
PR,
Women are
yeah,
marketing. Up marketing mein ho?
Absolutely.
Like that.
Yeah.
But Trishant, when you were working with the various writers through the entire 5 years, what is it that you look for when you decide, okay, I can write with this person, this particular series, or in general? Like, what is it that you look for?
I mean, this nothing.
Vibe.
Vibe check. Vibe
is
check.
very
Vibe,
important. I think it's like, see, one thing that I tell like writers who come to me, and like for example, the version of IC814 that you see on screen was written entirely by me and Anubhav, and we started writing it 3-4 months before the shoot. We scrapped everything and said, let's write a new version. But largely, I mean, it depends on vibe check is very important. But I think writers who come, they can write, but you have to realize, okay, who's going to be good for this project, who's going to be good for that project. I especially look for people who actually write and don't talk about writing.
Gundeep is smiling. I'm gonna come to her after this.
Yeah, because a lot of writers that I meet today don't write; they talk about writing.
See, it's not just me who says that.
So writers write. That's what we do. We get up and we write every day. It's like what Premchand said, ना कि आज मैंने लिखा नहीं है तो आज मैं रोटी नहीं खाऊंगा. So largely, but it's also because people you can connect with.
Yeah, people who speak like when I say the same language as
and
you.
It's important to have then it's also important to have contradictory voices inside the writer's room. You're not creating an army of yes men. Then you're not going to write something which is good. You need people who have come with different chain of thoughts, and different sort of upbringing. Like for example, if I'm writing a show which is based in, let's say, rural India. And we are 4 writers who are from metro. You will never understand that, because what you're looking for is that lived in experience. Or for example, if I'm writing a show about marriage or about women, and it's 4 writers sitting and writing about women, you will never, you don't have that lived in experience. You can never write that. So the idea is to have a good representation inside the room. The idea is to have people who might not be writers, but still can contribute in a capacity where they can teach you a few things, or they can contradict you, or they can fight with you. If there are no fights happening in the writer's room, it's not a good writer's room. Then what you're writing is something which is going to be very basic.
It's in a way how Google recruits its employees. It's not always from the IT or coding world. It's from different backgrounds to bring about that different perspective to the development of a product on Google. And talking about different perspectives, you put together a writer's room with these fine ladies, and also with Revanta, who has a dancing and acting background. So when you are putting together a writer's room, what is it that you're looking for?
Availability.
Budget.
No.
Willing to
I leave all that to the producer.
willing to give me 2 years of their life at low pay.
No, actually, see, I'll tell you, Revanta and Gundeep, they were with the production company, MA. So they were assigned on the project. Revanta came in much later, and Gundeep was there from the beginning. Adwitiya is the only one who I actually got in touch with and actively asked to be on part of the team.
And thank you for that. Thank you.
Thank you for doing this. And with Gundeep, and it was just like, I guess, serendipity or something like.
She passed the vibe check.
I mean, we were vibing from, she had me at hello. So,
Yeah, and going to Gundeep's thank you speech at the SWA Awards, you mentioned that Abhinandan is one of the few head writers who actually writes. So, would you like to elaborate on those that write, those that don't write?
Yeah, so I'll tell you. So before working on Freedom at Midnight, I had worked on, like, right when I worked on ads a little bit, तो खुद की writing खुद करनी होती है. Producer gave me a bunch of like briefs and feedback, so that was just to keep me in check. That was a very solo and like one-on-one with the producer conversation. So never bothered. I worked with a co-writer. Never bothered. Those were small-scale projects. Never got the green light. Then when I joined MA, I worked on Rocket Boys, but I joined MA during the lockdown. And it was a project that was already going very full steam, and Abhay was taking care of a lot of writing by himself. He was really he carried the whole show on his shoulders. At least as far as जब से मैं आई हूँ तब से मैंने यही देखा है कि he carried the show on his shoulders entirely. He wrote very detailed step outlines that I had to do very, some initial work on in terms of creating a framework for the screenplays, and then Abhay only came back and reworked my screenplays and then took them to their more experienced hands final form. So that was my experience working on Rocket Boys 1 and 2 both. Then I was part of a writer's room where I was co-writing. That was a project that never took off, but we were 3 co-writers, but the head writer was a little unclear because people coming in and out of the room. So that was also fine. Then fam happened. But Matlab, Abhinandan, oh my god. Yeah, it was quite cool because we had like all episodes divided between ourselves. Every episode that like Adwitiya and I would write, we would, at the half mark, like we were supposed to send it to him, he would give us things to watch out for, things to change while completing the episodes, and we would complete the
he
episodes.
also
And then he
wrote.
worked on our episodes apart from his episodes.
Apart from his,
Right, and then he like worked very, very closely with the dialogue writer, got multiple drafts in and out of them as well as us. And so he like, coordinated a lot of the working and did a lot of the grunt work himself, right? So, from my experience at FAM, I thought that is how things are. I thought कि यही होता होगा. Okay, and he has spoiled me. And then, when I went out of FAM and then I looked at other places or other spaces and got to know the experience of other writers, then I was in the shock of my life. The people said, yeah, I'm the head writer. And I said, okay, then how are we going to plan the whatever timeline? And
I didn't
said,
know any better. This is the first show.
No, Abhinandan, they need to learn from you, not the other ways.
Please don't unlearn anything, okay? So like, I went to rooms where people said, okay, I'm the head writer, and a producer, some platform has like agreed, okay, we're willing to like look at a project that's like this, okay, fine. And they did give a tone and a character and a little bit of a good head start to the plot. Tha usme. Okay, then, but when I said, okay, like they wanted us to make a timeline, and then I made a timeline ki aise hoga roughly, because I had worked on shows before. That person hadn't worked on shows. Like, to be fair, that person hadn't worked on shows before. They'd worked on films. And then I said, okay, फिर हम ऐसे divide कर लेंगे, कुछ मैं करूँगी, कुछ आप करेंगे, इतने time में we'll be able to turn. And they're like, no, I'm not writing. And then I said, oh, sorry, are you only attached in a directing capacity? I thought you were head writer. It was a genuine question, okay, that I had at the time. I said, no, I am the head writer, but I will not be writing. And then, like a bratty baby, I went to the production team that I was in touch with, and then I said, but how is this going to... No,
I'm
I
writing.
Said, how is this going to happen? I'm confused. And then I got to know, like, then I talked to other friends, and then I got to know ki, like, even in very high functioning spaces, even in a lot of like greenlit works, a lot of people do this. That, they say that, okay, I gave a 2-line idea, so now I am the story is mine. Right? And whoever poor person did the grunt work, converted that 2-line idea into a 70-pager. Okay, the story is not theirs. You're saying ki, like, the story is mine, and that person will get some screenplay credit. But what about that? Like, 2 lines is just an idea. 70 pages of the story, right? And I kept hearing, like, I was relatively quite a fresher, right, at the time, but I have heard this from very senior, very experienced people as well, ki they've had this experience continuously, and and everybody says, oh, I won't name names, I get it. But turns out, it happens in a lot of places, and this is just a fact of life that people have accepted as a parallel thread that goes on in the writing world, and I was really heartbroken at that. And then much more love and respect.
How long was this your first show? Like, how long have you been writing for?
It was our first show. It was Adwitiya's second show, but first time writers.
I mean, if you're talking about like another fight that screenwriters have to go through in life, and that is about credit, right? When you're starting out in this industry, most of the time people don't even bother to give you credit, and then later on, even when you're going along your journey and you have a couple of titles behind you, you always find people who are jumping in to take credit just for feedback, just for being in the vicinity. So that's an age-old issue. Now, coming to dialogue, so you're writing dialogues for a real life hijack situation. There are emotions involved, and there's also a lot of things happening in the background. So how do you ensure authenticity without really sensationalizing, which you didn't? I mean, by basically staying away from melodrama. Like, how do you manage that balance?
I think the idea was to stay as close to life as possible. Like, for example, how do interrogators negotiate? How does a negotiator talk? And there is no specific guidebook for that. They talk like normal people. So the negotiator would ask the hijacker, did you have tea or not? Do you need anything? Because he's trying to make the hijacker comfortable. He's the only job that the negotiator has कि वो अंदर जाके और लोगों को गोली ना मारते, you know. So वो पूछते थे रोज कि आपने चाय पी, आपको कुछ चाहिए, मैं आपके लिए कुछ भिजवाऊं, आपके घर में कौन है? Because you are talking for 3 days. 3 days you can't just talk about कि छोड़ो मेरे लोगों को, छोड़ो मेरे लोगों को.
Yeah.
You can't say that,
Yeah.
you know, for 3 days. So you talk about all the things in the world. Same goes for people in the plane, you know. We met a lot of people and we realized कि चल लोग normal ही बात करते हैं, मतलब हम लाइफ में डायलॉग्स नहीं यूज कर रहे हैं, हम अभी डायलॉग्स में बात नहीं कर रहे हैं. So the idea in writing dialogues everywhere is that one has to stay as close to life as possible. And I mean, the way I approach is I don't see people talking in long sentences, you know. Not everybody sits and gives a monologue.
Yeah.
You know, in a play or in a very sort of theatrical situation, it might work as in a stage play or something. But for shows and films, you have to be as close to life as possible, and that's where research helps. So obviously, there was this thing that I don't want to sensationalize. I don't want to sort of take a stand as a writer. I don't want to take a political stand. I don't want to take any sort of. I don't want to pick a side.
Yeah.
You know, because writing dialogues also came with writing screenplays. So it all, you know, they go together. You know,
Yeah.
I don't write dialogue separately and screenplay separately. So the idea was ki as much close to life as it's possible. As people would talk, let's talk like that, because that's the way if somebody is watching the show will connect to it more.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there was no specific training or anything for dialogue that happened, but
Yeah.
it was a part of the screenplay for me.
So I see 814 has some memorable dialogue, especially the coffee and tea debate.
Yeah.
Like, oh my God, that's one of my most favorite scenes. And then, of course, when the journalists are talking, you know, one says, you know, you should switch to television, and the other one says, I'll stick to print, which says so much about, you know, the state of journalism in the world today. So are these like instinctive, like for you as a writer? Is it something that you do in every project, or do you like deliberately craft them in order to be able to, you know, reveal character?
I think a lot of it is instinctive. You know the theme of the scene, and the whole process is that when you're writing, you don't want to write something that you have read before. You know, so that's a whole. I mean, like I remember the whole TV print. You know, TV. It was 99.
Yeah.
You know, we had already had a televised war, and it was a cusp of many things. You know, the millennium was changing, TV was coming, print was taking a back seat, phones were coming, mobile phones were coming, internet was knocking at your back door. So it was a time of change, you know. And obviously, what is happening today does become, you know, a sort of a mirror to look back at what happened in the past. So a lot of it has to do with that. Like for example, a dialogue, you know, like the process of writing dialogue is that it's mulling in your head. You know, you're thinking about what the line should be. And I remember in the break you asking about what is your favorite scene. So I remember we were shooting in Jordan, and we were the last episode we were shooting all the Kandahar portions we shot in Jordan. And Anubhav and I were sort of going in the car. We were struggling on a scene. You know, there's a scene in the end that there were these 4 negotiators are standing and talking. Is like, and somebody says, "We won," and the other one says, "Did we?" And then somebody says, "We fought," and the other one says, "Did we?" You know, so that became a very interesting scene that just came in conversations. You know, like the chai coffee was. I would give the credit to Anubhav only. I mean, that sort of it also comes out of conversations with the writer. But a lot of dialogues are instinctive. You can't think about, okay, I'm going to write this. You know, the process that I follow while writing is that I sit and write, you know, and I finish a scene, then I read it again, write it again. I'll possibly do 10, 15 iterations of it before showing it to anyone. So a lot of it, but if I think about, okay, I have to write a romantic conversation between 2 people, I'll not be able to write. I have to write a conversation between 2 people who happen to be in love. You know, now the situation will largely decide what sort of scene, what sort of conversation they will have, what their mood will decide. If they are happy, they are sad, where are they coming from, what are they going to do later in the day. You know, a lot of it. Like for example, the chai coffee scene, you see that these two individuals are on two different ends of the sort of bureaucratic spectrum.
Yeah.
You know, like for example, a theme that possibly was a theme inside the writers' room while we were writing these characters was that, okay, we'll deal with two kinds of people in the show, and I think it largely came from Anubhav, and then we sort of defined all the characters on those two themes. Is that there is a set of people who are doing their job, and then there's a set of people who are doing their duty towards the country, their duty towards the nation. So if you see in that scene, there's one person who's doing his job because he's a bureaucrat. He has to sit in that room. He has to solve this crisis because that's his KRA, you know, that he has to do. And there's a person who knows about things, who wants to do something, who wants to go to the depth of the issue, you know. And then how do you write a banter between these two people? Well, because they're also normal colleagues. They're sitting and they've spent the whole night in a room and they have not gone home and they've asked for chai, and you know, and because it's largely their politics, it's largely the things that they believe in, you know, where a person who's very methodical will say, you know, that coffee is like religion, you know, it cannot be misinterpreted. And the other says, yeah, I'm a tea drinker. And he knows that he's possibly has some sense of animosity, or you know, he feels towards that the other man. So it's all of a self-depreciating joke he cracks on himself. You know, chai is like blind faith. Now there is a subtext of that line. Now we don't talk about that subtext. If somebody understands subtext or somebody can understand that subtext, it's great. Otherwise the line works largely in itself as a joke. So I think that subtext while writing a show constantly plays in your head. You try that in every line, you know, that possibly at times it does land, at times it doesn't land. You know, this one scene it landed beautifully, so it largely worked and people remembered it. But the subtext becomes the base of writing dialogues, you know, because your scene will give you the visual, will tell you what's happening, and maybe in a corner or in a foreground or background you can show other things happening. But with dialogues you can play with the subtext. With dialogues you can really get into the psyche of the characters, and without talking a lot you can at times say things which possibly would define those characters. So I mean, so there are multiple scenes in IC and every scene is possibly the 257th draft of that scene. So that's also there.
Well, talking about subtext, I have to point out there was subtext of a number of my favorite scenes in the screenplay from Freedom at Midnight. We're talking about, you know, when Vallabhbhai Patel's half biscuit falls into the chai as a metaphor, the subtext being the partition of India. And Adwitiya, you can tell me more about this, you know, when they lose their way in the Viceroy's
That was
house.
Adwitiya's idea. It's genius. We loved it.
You know, as a metaphor for how we're going to get out of this maze that is 200 years of British rule. So tell me more about when you're crafting these scenes, you know, especially when, you know, I'm even looking at Edwina and Nehru's scenes, okay? What were the rumors, of their relationship, etc.? You never delve into it because that's not the major point of Freedom at Midnight, but how, the deep friendship that they had and how you chose to portray it and the scenes that you chose to portray it and all these choices of these scenes, like, in between this very dialogue heavy, you know, like you say, boardroom series, like, is it conscious or is it something that naturally comes to you guys when you're in the writer's room?
So, I mean, different writers have different processes. For me, I approach it like very, very technically. Like he said, you 257th draft, right? Writing is rewriting. That's what it is.
Good writing is definitely
rewriting. And thank you both for so many of our rewrites that we had. For me, I think it's, I mean, you need your scene to land its place in the story, its place in the arc. You need it to, each scene must do a couple of things, right? It must take the story forward. And you cannot lose the opportunity of whatever the guy is saying, that's his mentality, that's his psychology, that's his philosophy of life. Like exactly like what you're saying. This is so, and then now you must do, like, for example, the scene where they get lost. For me, actually, it's a comic relief scene, of course, in a serious thing. But more than that, it is because at the beginning of the adventure, we have to foreshadow the misadventure they're going to have. And how do we do it within, whatever we have? Like, structurally, that's what it's doing. And then it was able to hit a couple of other things. Like, we are showing two people who, in 2025, people think were at odds with each other, right? But in the context of the story, Sardar Patel and Nehru, they've been brothers in arms for 30 plus years at that point, at 1947, more than 3-4 decades. They've been fighting for independence together. How do you show that tete-a-tete,
Familiarity.
the familiarity, the brotherhood, even the irritation, like you have a different way of doing this, I have a different way of doing this. So all of that sort of plays into each other, I think, But yeah, initially you have to start with, oh, what I've written is shit and I have to rewrite it. Like, otherwise you'll never get to a point where it's halfway decent, So yeah. And I remember so clearly, everything we wrote, we discussed it.
Yeah.
And Abhinandan always had the best way of, first we had our step outline, so we had the plot points. But then he had the best way of explaining the scene, like as we go into screenplay, like how, do you remember even in the pilot, the president of the INC, like how
That scene, the
Sardar
election.
Nehru
Patel
was chosen
yeah,
over Patel.
yeah. Like, I remember clear as day you giving me an example of somebody जो ऐसे करते थे, okay, and Mahatma Gandhi is based exactly on that, right? So we had like, there was something, they constantly we are giving each
Mahatma Gandhi
other.
was based on Mahatma Gandhi.
Yeah, of course.
I hope so.
Yeah. But yeah, so like we always gave each other things to play off of.
Yeah.
That was the best, I would say. And nobody was ever satisfied with the first draft, which is I'm so grateful for, because that is the only way you can do anything worth like making something on. you know?
Yeah, I was coming into the project with a little more naivety than the two of them, because whatever, like
We were all naive. यार अभी भी बैठ के हम लोग naive हैं, I feel.
no, so I feel like I think a constant instruction or constant standard that Abhinandan had set for us was कि ये तो basic है.
हाँ.
इसमें कुछ, this is just two people sitting in a room. Do something more.
Yes.
Bring something new, bring something fresh. And at that time, I would think, Abhinandan, from all his direction experience, he's trying to inject this into the writing room.
Nuances like the crooked painting of Mahatma Gandhi,
Yeah.
and Patel is straightening it, and
Yes.
and he
Because
comes in and he
Patel
makes
is
a
going to
quip
fight
about
him,
like
yeah.
Ziddi people,
Yeah.
right? So little nuances like that, which
Yeah.
is when you're watching it, you're really enjoying it. So we do appreciate it.
Yeah.
We see it.
But sometimes we took it too far. Sorry. Like I remember there's a scene and all the critics trashed this. Okay, this is I think third ep where Gandhiji has gone to Noakhali. Okay, and वहाँ पे now the people are like आप चले जाओ, आप वापस
the
चले
bridge
जाओ.
breaking.
Yeah.
The bridge breaking, and now we have a character Gandhiji who is a stubborn man. He will do things even which are impractical. And so that's why we have to show it. तो हमने वो metaphor डाला, right? And
नहीं, but ये तो किताब में भी है.
हाँ, it's
no,
there,
but
जो
we
छाले
have
पैरों
really
में.
pushed. No, but we really pushed it. And I remember it like some people criticized it. And I was thinking at a later episode when we've shown Gandhi, we've shown the same people building the bridge. Like हमने metaphor बहुत खींचा है. Like I feel.
No, but that is actually how it happened also. Ki, like he did stay back. Like for the
Of
fourth
course,
episode, he stayed back. He made sure ki baat ban jaye. And the book goes into like a long chapter
Yeah.
about his journey over there. So I think the
I think subtext जब मतलब आना होता है, some divine intervention कुछ चमक जाता है.
Yeah.
But otherwise, if we try to force subtext, then this happens. When what we are trashed for.
I've been hearing this since my entry into the film and television industry in Bombay, and that is in Mumbai, and that is like अभी idea crack करना है. Crack कर लिया, crack करते हैं idea, and वही है, crack कर दिया idea. So you're sitting there and you're like, अब subtext crack करते हैं, and I swear I'm noticing it and I'm appreciating it. So it's
No,
good.
I would say आप करो subtext crack because how else is it better, right? How else is it better? Even in, say, no, ours is a gaudy show. Even in
Gaudy means?
Gaudy, matlab it's very ornate.
Godlike,
right?
matlab.
No, gaudy.
Acha,
gaudy.
GWDY.
Acha, like that,
Gaudy, like
हाँ.
ornate, big, larger than life personalities,
हाँ.
like an ornate show, right? But even in regular shows, like, fit it in because people will appreciate the thing more, I feel. Also, it challenges us like, as writers, right? Like,
Yeah.
why not?
But Trishant, when you were, because I mean, your case is different to Freedom at Midnight because they had different dialogue writers. When you were writing screenplay and dialogue, when in the process of your writing, do you really crack the character's voice? Like, is it when you're doing those 10-page biographies, like you were
that
saying?
is for me to understand the
Yeah.
character. That is me to understand the individual. But largely, I mean, honestly, for me, screenplay and dialogue are not two different things. First
Yeah.
of all, I can never. I mean, I'm old school that way. When I start writing the scene with dialogues. Otherwise, the scene doesn't work. Otherwise, it's what, a story, a treatment. We can, or whatever we call it, a detailed extended beat sheet. I mean, words keep on adding, but largely it happens with the scene. Largely it happens as you write that person, because you have spent considerable amount of time with that character, and when you're putting the character on paper, then it has to, his voice needs to be correct. His voice needs to be thought of before, like for example, if my character is Captain Devi Sharan, a pilot of 20 years who's promised his wife and daughter that he'll come back and take them to Sharjah, which is a real story, which is what he did. They were supposed to fly to Sharjah. So you see that he's in a happy mood. He's going to go on a holiday. Okay, my Captain Devi Sharan is from Haryana, so there's a way that he'll talk, or for example, my negotiator is a man who can talk for 3 days. So there's a way he'll talk. He's from a certain. I based him at a certain place. My RAW guy is possibly a man of few words. So he'll talk like that. So you sort of there is never that you think of scene first and dialogue later. I can't do that. If there are people talking in that scene, then it is the scene. So like for example, when we read different screenplays, there are writers abroad, they don't write any sort of instructions in the screenplay. It's just dialogue.
Yeah.
Like Sorkin writes like that.
Yeah.
There is
No,
no
Sorkin is only
Huh.
Sorkin. Like,
yeah,
I feel.
there's so many. If you read Inaritu screenplays, they're like that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they're largely like that. There is, because I
No
think he's
action
writing. I think he's also directing.
He's
So
also
possibly the
directing.
action line is in his head. But Sorkin doesn't do that. He writes only like a play.
Yeah, like man enters room, man speaks, man
Yeah.
leaves. But in the sense of, when somebody else has been credited for dialogues, I mean, everybody, it's a language difference, because, I mean, freedom.
No, like for example, then are you, like for example, as a dialogue writer, I also get a lot of projects where the screenplay has been written.
With the dialogues, yes.
Yeah, with the
English
dialogues.
dialogues, yeah.
English dialogues or indicative Hindi dialogues, or
Yeah.
and then you have to rewrite the dialogue. That's actually more difficult for me. Because I can't just translate
Yeah.
what's written in Hindi, English into Hindi,
Yeah.
then it wouldn't do. But then the moment I see the scene, I also see the flaws in that scene. Then I also see other things. Then I also see other things.
But then, you're also a story, screenplay, dialogue writer, right?
Yeah.
So you're looking at it holistically
Yeah.
as an entire script, right?
It's never separate from the screenplay.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think.
yeah.
Largely, it is the screenplay for me.
Yeah.
In this case, actually, it's very interesting. First of all, didn't you get exhausted? Like wasn't it tiring so much
It
on your
was.
plate? Crazy. But I'm also thinking.
257's draft
My
he
God.
mentioned.
Yeah, of course, yeah. But I was also thinking, in that case, because we really wrote it exactly how you said, with every metaphor jo dalna tha, we put it, and I remember thinking, ye Hindi mein kaisa lagega, right? And then many times Divinidhi took it and made it his own and swapped out the metaphors, and you're still like the thought is there, and obviously you were always there to guide him, and he's always there to like, I want it like this, I want it, so we have to match the quality. And I think in that he did an incredible job too.
No, he's fantastic. The
Yeah,
Vinidhi
yeah.
is just like, I think, I mean, I'm personally a big fan of his writing, and He just we had actually given him like dialogues in English worked out to the T. You know, I would
Yeah.
say they were
Yeah.
a step more than placeholder.
Yeah.
So in a sense, and also I think, to be fair to him, I think there were some moments where he felt a little constrained because we were like, okay, no, we've worked out the scene, let's not change it. Just because it was just so much of fact checking and research and fact checking that we'd arrived on that. Had it not been a historical, had it not been something which is so contentious, maybe we would have been able to give him more room to play with. But here it was like, okay, this is fact checked by 1,000 departments, by research, by S&P, by this is okay. So now within this you write the dialogue. So
Yeah.
he would get frustrated and I'm not able to change too much. But like she said, kudos to him. Like,
Yeah.
see, metaphors and all, I mean, language has its own. What is a metaphor in English will be lost in translation
Yeah.
in Hindi or any other
Yeah, their
language.
own nuances.
They're all culturally specific
Yeah.
to that language. So he just brought in so much of. I mean, now I can't even recall any of the dialogues that we wrote because
Yeah.
it was just so impactful, and I think like we were really lucky to have it.
Even in the pilot, right? The pilot, it starts with Gandhiji saying, like the nation will be divided over my dead body.
Yeah.
Right. So then in Hindi, and it's a big thing, right? Because at the end of the season, that's not upheld. Right.
Yeah.
That's his arc. And he had made it, and I always used to think, how will this be in Hindi? But it still packs a punch. He has said that, I think it's
देश का बंटवारा होने से पहले
मेरे शरीर का बंटवारा होगा, which I thought it's so.
It was very visceral.
Yeah, it was visceral and somehow more in line with partition because of the breaking of the body as opposed to dead body, right? Which is a limitation in English language.
Yeah.
Correct.
So, I mean, वो उभर के आया.
And like I mentioned before, we both Nikhil and me, we had a particular vision for the dialogues. Like I said, we wanted it to be punchy, we wanted it to be elevated, we wanted, मतलब सुर यहाँ था, मतलब we didn't want it to be like conversational or casual. We wanted it to be. So Nikhil's brief was actually, imagine if Salim Javed were to write dialogues to Vinidhi. That was exactly his brief. You play it on that pitch, play it on that sur. So I think he was just like, the Vinidhi is, we can't thank him enough. He was just.
Yeah, also because all the characters are real life characters, but they're larger than life for us. Because we have studied them and, look at them with a certain amount of reverence. So, they are larger than life for us.
Yeah.
So in that sense, the dialogues work perfectly.
Hopefully.
Yeah, they do. So were there any lines or scenes that refused to work, if you remember, no matter what? Like any scenes that just refused to work?
I mean,
They've been forgotten now.
They've been
Because
forgotten.
every writer has a
5
graveyard of scenes.
In the 100th
They are
draft.
just gone, yeah.
yeah, I mean, refuse to work, as in if it refused to work, then we'll
Chuck it
politely take that
Yeah.
scene out.
Yeah.
So I mean, also I can't say if it refused to work because, but yeah, I mean, thankfully in IC we were still as writers able to get what we wanted in the script. In a lot of shows that doesn't happen, and we're forced to write a certain scene. Okay, this scene will be there, or we need a scene like that. Thankfully in IC it was not the pressure because I think with Anubhav there, I had that support, somebody who can just say, okay, no, we are not doing this and we will do it this way. So, plus he was the director and the showrunner. So, I think that really helped the show. But I don't think there was any scene that refused to work.
But now, your series is about the Indian government. It's about, Air India. It's about IB Raw. Okay, it's also about Taliban. It's also in between about Al Qaeda. Okay, so how do you avoid pissing off any particular one?
You don't avoid.
You don't avoid.
You don't I think you don't think about that.
You don't think about it.
If you start thinking about that, then you will definitely end up pissing a lot of people. You know,
But was there a line you instinctively knew not to cross, or you were like, to hell with it when you were writing?
no, the idea, which is what I mean, the idea was not to take a stand.
Yeah.
The idea was to be as journalistic as possible.
I suppose if you found a fact that
Yeah.
basically made somebody somewhere
See, which
in
is
one incompetent or drop the ball or, things like
I
that.
mean, then the point is that does that help your story? Is it intrinsic to your story to talk about it? If there's anything sort of controversial, is it like for example, and I can talk about it right now. There was the PM's plane was in the same airspace as the hijacked airplane. We shot that scene. We wrote that scene. We shot that scene. But in the edit, we felt maybe it's not necessary because it doesn't impact the story in any way,
Right.
and neither does it take the narrative forward.
Right.
So there were hundreds of things that we found out later. For example, in our research that couldn't find the show. Like for example, there was a raid that happened in Afghanistan post 9/11, which is where they raided this one compound in Kandahar and they found flight manifest and passenger details of IC-814. And you realize that this event was used as a blueprint for 9/11.
Oh.
Where they realized that you don't have to put a weapon inside a plane. Flying plane is a weapon.
Wow.
Wow.
So a lot of and all of this is, I mean, I can talk about it because a lot of this is documented, a lot of this is researched and people have talked about it. So there are hundreds of things that couldn't find space in the show. But for example, a lot of accounts of what happened inside the plane, we couldn't write a lot of it. There were like for example, and a lot of things we deliberately toned down. Like the Antakshari was happening from the third day. For 4 days, they had nothing to do. There were people who were going and they had these miniature alcohol bottles and they were just getting drunk most of the time. There was the back of the plane was this major smoking area. There were different accounts. There were hundreds of different accounts, but and then there were stories that we did avoid talking about them.
Yeah, but then there's stories within the plane, of course, which made an impact, of course, on the environment. Like, when the toilets get clogged up.
Yeah.
It's very important to
It's
have
very
that
important.
aspect. And, the
It's very
flight
important because
attendants
the
having to
moment
deal
you
with that.
the moment you talk to survivors, the first thing, toilet.
Yeah.
And imagine they were sitting in a plane where you
4
can't go to
days.
toilet for 7 days. I mean,
7 days.
if somebody just tells you can't go to toilet for next 8 hours, you'll feel like just right away I want to
I
go.
need to
Yeah,
go now.
exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, and also, when those deaths happen on the plane, the amount of gore or how the scene had been written was just enough. It wasn't, just for the sake of showing it. It really impacted the emotion of the story. So kudos for that.
So I mean, also because we did manage to talk to the surviving wife many years back, and the way you see the scene is exactly the way it happened. So we did not want to take the liberty of dramatizing it.
Yeah.
Because out of respect for the survivors, out of respect of people who were there, and we also wanted to show this is what happened. There's no, I mean, these were hijackers and this is what they did, and this is a man who just got married, and with the idea of using a lot of real life footages along with these dramatized events was also the same decision that this is what happened. This is what has been recorded. So we are not going out of our way to tell you, okay, this is how we think it happened. This is how it happened. So going back to your original question, the whole idea was we'll tell the whole story the way it happened. And we will not try and...
Don't hold back and don't sensationalize.
Correct.
Basically,
Correct.
right?
Very well chosen, by
yeah.
the way, I must say. Like, I think you did a great job at picking the tone and the dramatic scale of the show. I think that went very well for the show. I loved it.
But yeah, thanks.
So what themes emerged? Like, did you think of themes before you started writing, or what are the themes that emerged as you went along in your research and in your writing process, Trishant?
Like, for example, I was just mentioning, while writing, like, we had this crisis management group which has all these bureaucrats sitting. The theme of job versus duty, that sort of became applicable for everyone. Like, a captain is doing his job, and then the co-pilot, who apologizes to him later because he didn't do something that he asked, is doing a duty. that sort of became a defining theme for us and that
Yeah.
really helped us throughout the entire writing process. How, because there are people, there are families on the ground, there are people, and then how to sort of really remain neutral throughout the process.
Yeah.
We were telling a real story. We were sort of using real life videos, footages to tell that story. And there was this overarching global story as well that was unfolding, which sort of happens in the voiceovers that come in the beginning of episode.
Yeah.
And for example, how was this connected to Kargil? How was this connected to the nuclear explosions in both the countries? It was not happening in isolation. The timing matters. That was why the timing of it.
Yeah.
So these were sort of broad themes. Like in the first episode, we had this diktat that, okay, show us the hijack, and we got so tired of it. We said, whenever a hijack happens, like we are sitting here and a plane gets hijacked somewhere, you learn it on the ground. You don't see a hijack happening in air. You learn it on the ground, and then your mind goes, okay, this is what must be happening inside the plane.
Yeah.
And it's more horrifying that way.
Yes, because that's what
your
happens.
brain
So our
can imagine
hijack starts on the ground. An officer is sitting, a call comes, this plane has been hijacked, and you have not entered the plane.
Yeah.
You enter the plane only later, where possibly it's been established that the plane has got hijacked. So theme wise, I mean, these were the major themes that we were tackling, with both inside the plane and outside the plane. Also, I think a very important theme for us was humanity. Okay, a hijack happened, but there were people who were trying to do their best.
Yeah.
The people who were trying to remain as human as possible in the time of crisis. And even if the person is considered bad, or even if the person is considered a villain, but if he did something which was human at that moment, then our idea was to sort of highlight it. Throughout the end. Doesn't matter who you are, what ethnicity, what nationality you belong to.
Yeah.
So these were the important sort of themes.
And for you guys?
I guess
I remember-
power was one of the main themes that, I mean, at least for me, like you guys say, but it's essentially a power struggle, like the story of Freedom at Midnight, between two political parties who saw power up for grabs at the precise moment of the British departing from India. So it is a power struggle, and how power or political power, it really, what are the different sort of aspects of that? I mean, to give you like a example, one scene that I remember is Patel gets a call that riots are happening in Bombay, and he's sitting with Gandhi, and he says, "Oh God, get the situation under control, and if need be, lathi charge. Tell the police that they're allowed to do lathi charge." And Gandhi just reminds him, "Isn't it ironical that till yesterday you guys were at the receiving end of lathi charge, and now that you're in that seat, you yourself are advocating for a lathi charge?" And he says, "But I'm the Home Minister. I'm in charge I'm in charge of law and order. So it's my job, So it's interesting that how when you're sitting in different, when you're sitting in the seat of power, what are your motivations? Whereas when you are agitating, or you're an activist, you want something in the opposition, then it's different. So how power really plays, that would, for me, you guys. And
Yeah. No, I was just going to say that I remember in the first few days of our meetings, you had told us, you're like, what do you think should be the theme of our thing?
Yeah.
And you made us write a few things. I mean, it escapes me now, but thank God you set that tone for us right from the get-go. Our bones were strong, and obviously we had your story document also.
Yeah.
So, I mean, theme-wise, there's so many themes, right? Like, of course, again, going from the power thing, we also had how ambition of one
Yeah.
should not, so the ambition of one being the ambition to create Pakistan, of course, and then should
Versus
not
the sacrifice of many,
of
something
many,
like that. Yeah.
And at then some point, even, I don't know, kudos to Sony Live, I guess, the whole idea of history you do not know, history you I mean, these are things we discovered
Yeah,
later
yeah.
on because there's so much
Another
juice.
another one that we had also discussed amongst ourselves was something along the lines of ki when elephants wrestle, it's the grass that gets trampled.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah, and
And
that
that
is
is a
sort of what
partition.
we're looking at.
Yeah.
Ki the elephants are doing their job and the grass.
Through it all, I mean, obviously, everybody's a writer, whether they're in the writer's room or not. Everybody has an opinion. How did you how do you treat feedback when it comes, whether it's from a platform at the time of development, whether it's from a director, whether it's from the actors when they get the scenes? How do you guys deal with it? What is your take on it?
I mean, you ask a writer, what does he think about feedback? I mean, when I was starting out, I used to get angry, a lot of times. When you're starting out, but I've been writing for more than 12, 13, 14 years now. And I mean, feedback, you have to take everything. I mean, I take all the feedbacks. At times, whatever that comes your way is particularly stupid. At times now I realize, okay, this person hasn't read it.
Yeah.
This person has possibly not read it. I know that this person has not read it. At times there is a lot of good feedbacks. Like for example, a lot of time feedbacks from actors is really helped you. For example, with I'll tell you, like on IC, Manoj Pavaji and I rewrote all his scenes by improvising. I used to sit in his vanity and he says, "Yaar, Trishant, ye to abhi bola tha yaar, abhi to bola tha." And because in the shoot also what used to happen was I was hiding and I was taking all the hijackers lines because the actor the portions were shot differently. The hijacker's portion was shot differently and his portions were shot differently. So I was the hijacker while taking lines standing at a corner for him so that he can act. And a lot of his lines, but we had just improvised it. Like you asked me, like now I remember. There's a line that Pavaji says कि इतनों का करेंगे क्या आप? हमने पकड़ तो लिया, हमें नहीं समझ में आता इतनों का क्या करें? Where they were asking for 37 people.
Yeah.
Says, क्या करेंगे आप इतनों का? And that line was just came while I was talking to him and we were just chatting.
Yeah.
Just to make it more conversational.
Yeah.
So a lot of time feedback really helps.
Yeah.
And a lot of time feedback is, realize that somebody has just given feedback for the sake of giving feedback. But you can't do anything about it. As writers, you are powerless against the might of feedback.
You have to learn polite discourse.
You have to accept it. You have to become thick-skinned.
Yeah. And what do you guys think is the future? What would you like the future of OTT to be?
You guys.
This is a big one.
I think, okay, because I'm also execing right now. Yeah, so I think maybe from both POVs, I think what all of us would definitely want is a little more plurality. Because, we did have a little moment in the OTT landscape where it felt like, we might have too much of one kind of thing. And that became a little question mark in my head personally. And I wanted कि नहीं और भी तरीके की voices हैं, और भी तरीके की storytelling है, और भी tones हैं, और भी spaces हैं जहाँ हम जा सकते हैं. Something that we constantly impose on ourselves within the writer's room, which is कि कुछ नया, कुछ fresh, कुछ अलग, right? So I think that applies from my side to the OTT landscape as well. So whenever something fresh comes up, whenever, somebody picks up a lens that nobody else has thought would be important to look at, that I really, would love to see more of. So, for example, Raat Jawan Hai on Sony Live was such a refreshing show.
Nice.
And, I think the West has tried to do shows like that in terms of you have
Slice of life.
slice of life, and specifically on the subject of parenting and being young parents as well, right? And they have their own cultural relationship with that role. But we as Indians, we are a different we cut out from a different fabric. in terms of the family structures, in terms of social structures, right? So this POV and this relationship with life, work, your partner, parenting, having a child, things that change, things that don't change. Like I really appreciated that Sony, as well as the writers like Khyati, Sumit, they decided to create something in that space, and I'm really glad that nobody else said ki oh but ye dekhega kaun. Right, and I think I want to see much more of that on OTT.
But anyway, slice of life for most OTT platforms, at least I mean from the limited experience that I have, is like a no-go. Or any slice of life mat karo, coming of age mat karo. Baki, matlab, thriller is.
I think there needs to
sure.
be less reliance on data.
Yes.
Right now,
Thank
I think
you.
there is so much reliance on data, and there is so much. I mean, writing doesn't come from data; it comes from experience or any sort of, and creation doesn't come from data.
Yeah.
So largely, what I feel, I mean, what I want to see as the future is a little bit more trust from the platforms towards its creators, and generally, I'm talking about all. You know, it's not a battle about who knows better, because no one knows better.
Yeah.
You know,
No one knows it.
Yeah.
no one knows it.
No one
No one
knows.
knows it what people will watch tomorrow. No one knows what people will like tomorrow.
Exactly.
We get all these fads like vertical dramas and this and that, and right now, we do have attention span of ants, which is understandable. But that doesn't mean that tomorrow something comes and you always look at the West. Okay, look, this show was great or that show was great. I think there needs to be a little more trust and a little less reliance on data and Excel sheets.
You have to create the audience.
Yeah.
You know, they
I think the
forget that they
audience is
created
already
it.
there. We're a country of 1.5 billion people.
But you never know
Yeah.
if you've never given it to them. You know, how do you know if it
Correct.
works or not?
Correct. So,
Correct.
there's, I feel like, because I've been an engineer myself, and like my entire friend circle is working in tech and data analysis and all of that. I think as a creative person, there is something to be taken away just from the fact that what data is representing is just it's just an analysis of what already exists. It will not anticipate what can happen in the future, and that is something where anybody who's in the creative space, anybody who's in the intellectual space as well, right? Like these are the departments who are working for the future, and if you rely that heavily on past and past trends, then you're really selling yourself short in terms of trying to build for a future. So
True.
there's definitely
So I'm going to now do a quick rapid fire with you guys just to end things. I'm going to throw a word at you and the first thing that comes to your mind, right?
Okay.
So starting, I'm going to go like this, okay? Starting with Abhinandan, outline.
Important.
Rewrites.
Hell yes.
Writer's block.
it's a hillock to be climbed.
Fact checking.
Very important.
Very important. Deadlines.
Work your way around it.
Pitch deck.
Make it good, as good as
Make it
possible.
good.
Yeah.
Mountbatten.
Flair.
Okay. Raw.
RAW, you mean?
Huh.
Okay. Secretive.
Secretive. Nehru.
Idealist.
Partition.
Painful.
Writer's room.
Democratic.
Coffee or tea.
Coffee when I'm outside, tea when I'm home.
Nice.
Platform notes.
Pick your battles.
Huh?
Yeah.
Director's notes.
Yeah, necessary, I would say.
See, you guys are being very diplomatic.
No, but he has to execute aage jaake, na?
Yeah.
So,
And
he
premiere
or she-
night.
no.
Honest feedback.
Honest feedback. Reviews.
Oh. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, okay. Awards nights.
Fun.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
yeah.
And
Fun.
audience reactions.
Okay, sorry. No, it's a rapid fire. Sorry.
If it's favorable, I like it. If it's not favorable, I hate it. I want to crawl out of my skin.
Well, that's all what we hope for as writers, that everybody has a favorable reaction. And thank you so much
Thank you.
for talking
Thank you.
Thank
to us
you.
today. And hoping for many more successful projects and wins for all you guys.
Thank you.
so
Thank you very
much.
much.
Thank you,
very much.
Devika.
And thank you to SWA
Yes.
for
Yes.
for
Yes.
organizing
Yes.
this, for you for asking us these questions and giving us our award. You know, thank you so much.
Thank you to the
guys.
SWA for all its
Thank you, yeah.
Yes.
fight
Yeah.
that it
SWA
does
should
on our
not
behalf.
make writers feel this special
Yes.
because there's an outside world that we have to
Yeah.
go to where
We're not treated so well.
Hopefully, the
Exactly,
whole world
you know.
will be like SWA one day.
Yeah.
hope so.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.